Hall & Wilcox acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands on which this podcast is recorded. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and to all First Nations people joining us today.
Hello, and welcome to our latest Private Clients podcast, Business Succession, where we will be talking about business succession planning and the issues that commonly arise for business owners looking to transition family businesses, whether planned or unplanned. Just to give a little context to this discussion, there is an expected $3 billion intergenerational wealth transfer expected in the next 10 to 20 years, with quite a substantial part of this wealth attributable to privately held businesses. My name is Erin Brown, and I'm a member of the Newcastle Private Clients team at Hall & Wilcox. I'm delighted to be your host for this episode. Being part of perhaps the largest private clients practice in Australia, here at Hall & Wilcox, we see business succession planning where it has been sensibly and pragmatically done on the one hand, and on the other, those cases where perhaps this has not been done so well or at all. We wanted to share with listeners the fundamentals of why business succession planning is so important and the systems and documents that business owners should put in place to ensure a smooth transition of wealth and control. On today's podcast, we're going to lay the foundations for successful business succession. On later episodes, we will delve into some of these topics in more detail, including putting buy-sell arrangements in place and the role of the family office. I am joined today by my colleague, James Wiley, a partner in our Sydney Private Clients team. James specialises in estate and succession planning for high and ultra-high net worth clients, both within Australia and internationally, including in the UK, Europe, US and Asia. James is experienced in estate and trust disputes, including cross-border succession issues and conflicts, tax planning and related advice to trust structures for both Australian and UK non-residents. James, what is business succession planning and how important is it?
Thank you, Erin. Business succession planning is the essential process that should be undertaken by all business owners to adopt a strategy for the future growth and longevity of the business without disruption. However, it's not all about passing control to the next generation. Business succession planning also assists a company to identify gaps in its resourcing or skill set to ensure it's prepared for the future any changes, particularly unexpected changes. Interestingly, while business succession planning is often discussed, it is often not seen as a priority, not unreasonably, because business owners are often focused on their day-to-day matters of running the business, and the issues around transition of management, responsibility, wealth transfer and succession can seem very remote and not an essential task, particularly for our younger business owners. Studies show that only 1 in 4 company boards have a formal succession plan in place, and in fact less than 30% of business owners aged 51 to 60 have a written succession plan in place. There are many reasons for this, in addition to finding the time. So one is an unwillingness to consider a future for the business where they're not involved in controlling it, an assumption that succession for the business will just somehow work itself out, and also the fact that the task can seem overwhelming, particularly say when family members may be involved as well.
James, we spend a lot of time talking with business owners, and I find it fascinating how many do not have a formal succession plan in place, or in some cases, any plan at all. Not only can a well thought out succession plan allow business owners to identify and support future leaders, but it gives businesses the ability to respond quickly to change in the event of an unexpected event happening. By facilitating a smooth transition, there is the ability to preserve brand identity, mitigate risk, and perhaps most importantly, preserve family harmony. James, throughout this podcast series, we're going to discuss various business structures and the succession planning issues that pertain to each type of structure. One of those structures is the family discretionary trust, which many family businesses are operated through. James, what is unique about these structures and how does business succession planning for a trust work?
Thanks, Erin. One of the key issues that many people do not realise is the assets held in a discretionary trust do not form part of someone's estate and therefore cannot be transferred by way of their will. So rather than passing shares or units to beneficiaries, it's necessary to carefully review the terms of the trust deed, which is essentially the rule book of the trust, and consider how control of the trust passes. Given the discretionary nature of these structures, passing control can vary from relative simplicity, where there are minimal beneficiaries and where beneficiaries get along, to more complex family agreements where only certain family members are involved in the business, or there are multiple beneficiaries who are unable to work together, yet the family want the family wealth to pool together. In terms of a trust, there are also key roles. There's the role of the trustee, which many people who have a trust are familiar with. That can be an individual or a trustee company. We generally recommend a trustee company because you can pass your shares through that into your will. The trustee deals with the day-to-day control of the trust in terms of making distributions to beneficiaries, investing assets, and if there is a business involved, in running the business. There are also beneficiaries of the trust, which are what we call discretionary beneficiaries in a typical discretionary trust. They legally only have a mere hope the trustee may exercise its discretion in their favour, although case law is showing trustees need to give more attention to the needs of individual beneficiaries these days. Then there's also the role of the appointor, which is often overlooked by clients. It doesn't do anything on a day-to-day basis, but the appointor fundamentally controls the trust because they can hire and fire the trustee. So if the role of the appointer passes to a particular person, they can potentially change the trustee and could cut out other family members from benefiting from that trust. The simplest form of trust succession is to prepare what is commonly known as a deed of appointment to successor appointors, passing the power of appointment of the appointor to the intended controllers of the relevant trust. Provisions can then also be included to pass shares in the corresponding trustee company to the future appointors under the will. This strategy has the benefit of being simple, straightforward and cost effective. However, it doesn't deal with how decisions will be made at the appointor or the director level going forward, which can be an issue where significant wealth and family businesses are held through the trust structure.
James, one of the strategies that we implement quite frequently is to put a bespoke constitution in place, particularly for trustee companies, that sets out how successor directors are to be appointed and how decisions are to be made once the existing business owner dies or becomes incapacitated. How common are bespoke succession planning constitutions, and what do you see as their key features?
Thanks, Erin. We're seeing a lot more interest in clients wanting to deal with succession to their trusts, and particularly around wanting to ensure children want to benefit equally and control the trust, and that isn't normally achieved through a normal trust deed. The idea of a succession planning company constitution is a way of trying to ensure equality between family members and also ensure they can all be involved in decision making there so that one family branch can't cut the others out. Without actually amending the terms of the trust deed, which could be a potential tax or duty issue, a way to achieve such equality is through the company constitution of the trustee company, and essentially involves putting in place a new, what we call a succession planning company constitution to replace the existing company, and also creating special classes of shares. And typically these shares, the rights attached to them would give down the track when both parents, and if we're talking about a situation where we have a parent or parents are both not around, and that each family branch will hold different classes of shares, say the A, B and C class shares. The A class shares give the right for that class shareholder to appoint a director to the trustee company board, and likewise for the B class shareholders. So there's always equal representation there, and not a situation where one family member is not involved in making decisions and potentially cut out. Also, the terms normally provide that the trust remains discretionary for tax planning purposes, but if the special class shareholders can't get on and agree decisions unanimously, that each special class shareholder can decide how their equal share of the income can be distributed to their respective family branch. And if the family wants it as well, potentially for an exit mechanism to built in whereby that special class shareholder can get their share of the capital out of the trust, and there's a valuation mechanism designed in that to ensure everything is done properly to minimise the chance of disputes.
Thanks, James. Another commonly adopted business succession strategy that I'm seeing is a family agreement. So these documents are entered into between all family members and business entities, and can be particularly useful where the family business is operated through a number of companies and trusts, or where there's potential animosity between family members. Family agreements contain provisions similar in nature to a shareholders agreement, and while they're generally more involved and more costly, they provide much greater flexibility to families than standard succession planning documents. By having all family members execute a family agreement and effectively get on board with the proposed succession arrangements, you can avoid lengthy and costly disputes. Family agreements typically include provisions relating to the appointment of directors and decision making, the ongoing management of the business, the ownership and the succession of ownership of shares in any trustee companies or units in unit trust, for example, distribution policies and salaries of family members who work within the business, And then, as you mentioned before, also look at how family members can exit the business and potentially cash out their notional interest in the family business. It's really common for a family agreement to appoint an overarching family board tasked with the overall management of the family group. Such a board will usually include all family members, but it is becoming increasingly common for independent board members to be appointed alongside family members to ensure neutrality and prevent deadlocks and disputes. James, we've talked about succession planning for discretionary trusts. What about directly held businesses where business owners hold their interest in the business directly, either through a company or a unit trust?
Yes, Erin. So where shares or units are held directly by an individual, the relevant shares and units can be passed to the next generation through the individual's will. And it's also common for shareholders or unit holders to have an agreement in place that set out each of the matters that we've previously discussed, including decision making, ownership and exit. These agreements can be put in place to operate immediately, for example, where there are multiple business owners, or only on the death or incapacity of a business owner passing their business to multiple future owners. It's really important that shareholders' agreements include robust exit mechanisms and not only deal with what happens when a business owner wants to sell the business or retire, but also what happens in the event of an unexpected exit, such as death or incapacity. Where there are multiple business owners, it's common for such events to be dealt with through buy-sell arrangements, which ensure that equity in a company or unit trust can be acquired from an affected member when they are unable to continue in the business. This ensures that the company can continue to operate uninterrupted and the affected member or the key person or their estate or their trust is compensated. Typically, buy-sell deeds are structured as put and call options, whereby the continuing shareholders can call on the sale of the shares by the affected shareholder, and the affected shareholder can compel the acquisition of the shares of the affected shareholder. Often insurance is taken out in respect to the life or total and permanent disablement of a shareholder, which assists in funding the unexpected exit event. I understand that we'll be focusing on buy-sell arrangements in our next episode, Erin.
Thanks, James. As you can see, it's really important that business owners have robust succession plans in place that deal with each of the issues that may arise in the event of the unexpected transition of a family business. By putting these strategies in place, we may be able to improve on the success rate of transferring family businesses to the next generation. Interestingly, research currently shows that only 1/3 of family businesses continue into the second generation, and less than 16% of businesses survive to the third generation. Thanks everyone for listening today. That brings today's podcast to a close. Our next podcast will focus on directly held businesses and the role of buy-sell agreements in succession planning. As always, please feel free to reach out to myself, James, or any of our Hall & Wilcox private clients team if you have any questions or would like to discuss your own business succession arrangements. You can find our details on our website, which is hallandwilcox.com.au, or connect with us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's episode, then rate, review, or subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
This podcast is not legal advice and should not be relied upon as such. You should always obtain legal advice about your specific circumstances.